What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Odd Popcorn for that review. I'm Chris,
And I'm Nick.
and we are here today to talk about a movie called Biosphere. So this just came out. I don't know where you can go see this in person. Nowhere near either of us, but we just rented it, so you can rent it on a bunch of platforms, VOD platforms right now. But kind
It
of came out of nowhere. We saw a trailer for it. I think we each saw a trailer for it at least once in
yeah,
theaters. So they advertised it a little bit. But let's just get into it. This is an interesting little movie. What did you think?
I liked it. It was not the movie I was expecting to see from the trailer, and I think that was a good thing. I think they did a really good job of portraying it as something, and then flipping it on you, having like no idea what it turned into. Uh, it was like it had good humor, but it was kind of the humor that best way to describe it for me, I guess, is kind of like The Office, where it kind of like makes you wince a little bit, but it's still
Yeah,
kind of
like that
funny.
awkward humor.
The awkward humor, yeah. But I did enjoy it overall.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny in the weirdest kind of way. It is definitely that, like, laughing because it's an awkward situation most of the time. There's a little bit of but yeah, where they go with this is so crazy. So,
Because
the simplest premise. And by the way, like, nobody's really talking about this, I don't think, because if you look online, like, you can't it's hard to find just even a plot synopsis of this.
yeah,
But I mean, the general premise is, for reasons that they sort of get into in the movie, the world is essentially over. So these are presumably the last two people on Earth, Sterling K. Brown
Mark
and Mark
Duplass.
Duplass. By the way, I didn't say this at the beginning, but this was directed by Mel Eslin and written by her and Mark Duplass. And Sterling K. Brown and Mark Duplass are the only two people in the movie. So um, but they're presumably the last two people on Earth, and they're in this like bomb shelter slash experimental biosphere that was, I guess, made by Sterling K. Brown. I'm not. We can get into that in a minute.
Yeah,
But but uh, but we find out that Mark Duplass's character became president, and it almost seems like, I don't know. I'm not sure, but he was only president for 14 months before things went haywire, and now they've been in this. We don't know how long. I don't think they say, right?
they just say years, so I'm
They've
assuming.
just been in this dome for years,
Yeah,
and they're just living off of the fish that live. As far as I can tell, they're just living off the fish that live in these tanks and like tomatoes that grow. And there's a few other things, but everything is like self-contained, and they grow it, and it's supposed to be like a what's the word I'm looking for? Where it's sort of a cycle. Like maybe the tomatoes are growing from the fertilizer that the fish produce, some kind of thing like that, where it's like kind of an enclosed ecosystem.
hmm
And the kind of initial catalyst of the movie, because it seems like it's just business as usual. It's been so many years since the world has ended, I guess, that it's pretty casual conversation to, like, we're done beating ourselves up, like talking about who caused it or whose fault it was, or feeling guilty about it or whatever. It's just we've been living here for years, and we're trying to fight the boredom, and they start every day with this run. But uh but Sterling K. Brown's character, what's his character's Woody. What's the
no, Ray.
Oh no, yeah, Woody's the yeah.
Yeah, it was
They
Ray
named the
is.
fish.
Yeah, Woody is one of the fish. Ray is Sterling K. Brown, and Mark Duplass is Billy.
Right. And um and so the thing that kind of sets everything off is they find out that the Sterling's character notices that one of the fish have died, and he says that it's Woody that died, and so they eat the fish, and the vibe is fine. I mean, it's like, we lost one fish, but we still got two left, and it's all right, and the vibe's good, and they do this thing that comes up a couple times in the movie where, like, they kind of have a ceremony in like almost a funeral for the fish giving his life, and they award him the, I guess, the Congressional Medal of Honor or whatever the presidential
Yeah,
medal is, and then we find out, like, he's like, that doesn't look quite like Woody, like that little mark there is what Diane had on her, and if it's Diane that we're eating right now, that's the last female. And so I was surprised by how quickly we get into territory that we can't talk about in a non-spoiler review anymore. Because,
yeah.
like, right off the bat, it's like, oh, we're into it. I mean, it's not a long movie, but also like really early on. To me, early on in the movie, they're like, here's where we're going with this movie. So yeah, so spoilers from this point going forward. And I think we both think you should watch this movie. So,
Hmm.
uh, but yeah, we find out that the female is the one that died. So we've got two males here. Well, the next time we look at the fish, one of the fish that's left, it looks like he's sick or he's like his color's changing. He's like they said something about like growths. I guess is like his body's changing in a certain way, and pretty quickly, like there's a night um, where he stays up all night and he's like reading all the Sterling K. Brown's character reading all these books and trying to figure out what's going on here, and stays up all night, and by the morning he's like manic about what he just found out, and what he's finding out is that this fish has become a hermaphrodite and is changing to a female. And as soon as he says something about like how like, oh, the testes are being absorbed, and they're like, oh, and his outie's becoming an innie, like we going on. And as soon as he says that, Mark Duplass's character, Billy goes like runs into the bathroom, and we got a magnifying glass out, and we're looking at his pants pulled down and everything. And I was like, holy cow, they are gonna go here with this movie, and they totally do.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Because at first it
so
seems
yeah,
like he might have, because the night that Sterling K. Brown's character stays up all night, like researching, Billy is like sick, not feeling well, and he's thinking, oh, maybe it's because he ate that fish and it was
it was like
died
sick,
for it
and
was sick and he has food poisoning or he has something going on.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, they kind of like get you with that, thinking maybe he's just sick, and then that scene happens.
I mean, as soon as we got a magnifying glass out, I was like, "Oh boy, we're in for an interesting ride." And it's so early in the movie, so yeah, that's what you think might be happening is totally happening. Like evolution is accelerating, I guess, because of
Survival.
yeah,
As
survival. Like I guess there's something in the air that's telling evolution, like you got to act now because this is the survival of the species is at stake. Which I mean, you got to take a lot of this with a lot of grains of salt, you know.
Yeah, because I mean, if they've been in
Um,
there for years, that would have happened earlier, I would have imagined. But
and like it's happening at the same time as the thing with the fish and everything, and you got to just forgive it for a lot of that.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I'm just gonna kind of cut to the chase here and say that ultimately what's happening is, well, I'll say this: there's a green light that we see. I don't know like when it first shows up as far as in the story, but not long. I think it's like not long after.
I think it's like after the fish dies. I think it's the
I
night
think
he's
it's
doing research. He kind of like looks over, and as the
like
fish is
right after the
changing,
fish,
he sees the green light like out in the distance. Because
and at
everything's
first it's
just
just like
black
a.
outside. You can't see anything outside.
Mhm. Yeah, it's never daylight. Like the light is on like a timer to kind of mimic the circadian rhythm and everything. So it gets like 8 o'clock or something. The lights kick on. Um, but yeah, so it's just like a little pinprick of green light, and over the course of quite a while. I mean, this movie's supposed to be taking place over like months at least.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a year, and over a long while, it's getting closer and closer, but really slowly. But it's getting bigger, whatever this green light is. And then at some point, there's like a storm that comes through one night, uh, and this is like our first evidence of any kind of weather happening on this planet, and it's kind of the first sign of hope. I mean, maybe the green light was the first inkling of a sign of hope, but ultimately, this storm, it's like how can a storm be happening? And in the process of this storm breaks some of the windows, and they have to like it's like a mad dash to seal off the window, and nothing's really working to seal off the window. And in a mad dash to figure out what to seal that window off with, they use the fish tank, and so we lose all the fish. I mean, not necessarily like they can still eat them, but like there goes that project.
Yeah,
That
they
sealed our fate. And but they are able to seal it up and everything, and in the at the end of the movie, like the last few minutes of the movie, it's basically the tables have sort of turned because this whole time, uh, tell me Sterling K. Brown's character's name again. I can't get it in my
Ray.
head. Ray. This whole time, Ray, like he's kind of their friendship role not due only to like this crazy thing that's happening with gender and everything, but their friendship role is kind of shifting where, you know, we can get into it in a minute. I don't want to get lost in that, but it's kind of become like he was the optimist, and now at the end he needs someone to be the optimist for him sort of, and give him some hope in this situation. And the whole time there's this running gag about a bowling ball, which we should talk about in a second.
Yeah,
But
because
uh,
they're like
no, maybe we
lifelong
should talk about it now.
yeah, might as well. I mean,
Yeah,
they're lifelong friends, and they've been friends since like they were 6 years old or something. And the bowling ball gag that they keep talking about is, I guess, at Ray's 8th birthday party, there was a magician that had like a pad of sheets of paper, asked him what he wanted for his birthday, and he said a bowling ball. And then he drew the bowling ball, and it fell out of the paper like a
he
magician.
like watched a bowling ball just fall, like an actual eight
Yeah,
pound bowling ball fall out of this
and like
pad of paper.
a thud happens, and that's what made him real to him. And I guess Billy's character has like denied remembering this or like that it ever even happened.
Like it drives him crazy anytime he brings it up, because it's like his whole thing, at least in the beginning, is that he can't stand these mysteries that don't have good answers. It's like he
Yeah.
needs there to be an answer to everything, and which seems like it would fit Ray's character more, because he's like a biologist, or
Mhm.
at least he was a biologist. Uh, but yeah, so I mean, the end gag, and I thought it was handled really well. I mean, I could see what was happening, but the end gag uh, is, it's like we got to believe in some magic. And as Ray's like crying, he's showing him this notepad, and he draws the bowling ball on the notepad, and then at the very end he flips up the page, and you hear the thud hit the ground, and it just, that's the end of the movie. And but the gag is that, that I didn't say, is that um, through a scene that we'll have to get into, I'm sure, uh, they end up making a baby.
Yeah.
And so by the end of the movie, you know, he is full blown pregnant, like baby's on the way. And we're also talking, it's we're having a discussion about if it's safe now to walk outside, because this after the storm,
There's like
what's left is not a green dot anymore.
yeah, and it's like the whole thing about it being black outside is that there's no atmosphere. So, I mean, maybe something happened to the sun as well, but there's no atmosphere on the planet. And that's when they're talking about the storm. Like the only storms can only happen if there's an atmosphere, so that makes sense. And there's like the green dot is like evolved into basically an aurora borealis type looking thing
Yeah, I
towards the
guess
end
it's
of the
supposed to be
movie.
like kind of a hole in the blackness of the sky, like there's some light peeking through, or something's happening here that gives them some reason to hope. And so,
Mhm.
that 8 pound bowling ball is also a metaphor for the 8 pound baby, the eight
Yeah.
pound magic bowling ball. uh, but yeah, so I mean, where to begin? There's a lot to say here. What were some what were some things that stood out to you that you really liked, and then we can talk about a couple things that it has some flaws, so we can talk about that too. But what are some things that you really liked about this?
I mean, just the humor in it itself was really good, I thought. Their relationship, like how they were really good friends, and then they had this rift between them, and they came back
Mm-hmm.
together and were like basically a couple almost. That was a good
Mm-hmm.
little weird twist of a story development that I liked.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a straight guy, you can kind of put yourself in these shoes, and it's like you're in the situation with like a best friend, or even if it's not a best friend, a friend, and you're in the situation where something as crazy as this happens, and the kind of tests that would put on your friendship, for sure. Uh, because it's not too far into the movie before there's discussion about like what are the mechanics of like we got to utilize this to make a baby, right? Like, are we going to do a turkey baster, or are we going to do,
Yeah,
how do we go about this? And it pretty much comes down to like, no, no, we can't do a turkey baster. This is going to have to be real
and
deal.
it's Mark Duplass is kind of inquiring about it, like, is it something you could think could happen? And he's like, well, you'd have to menstruate, and he's kind of like, well,
He's like, that just happened.
yeah, and they're like, oh my gosh, and
It's so funny that they trust you to go with them on this ride, because this is quite a quite a leap here we're taking.
yeah. And Sterling K. Brown is kind of like interested in it as like a scientific standpoint to see if it could happen, but he's also like disgusted by it.
he's certainly not as interested in this experimenting thing as when it comes down to this, because
Yeah,
there's like this movie does kind of balance, like it straddles the line between like kind of an offbeat like I guess dark comedy, because the subject
mm-hmm.
matter is dark, but it's also like there's moments where there is something to be gleaned from this, because there's this weird thing where there's a couple of moments where they're not talking to each other, and so they kind of use the fish as the vehicle to have conversations with each other after periods of silence or whatever. So they'll be telling something to the fish in within earshot of the other, and this happens twice, and at least twice, and uh, and what I'm losing my train of thought. Something about one of the conversations they have with the fish. Um,
uh,
I don't know, but there's
yeah,
a anyway. There's a moment where it turns into a fight, like them talking about the prospect of making a baby turns into a fight, and uh, and Mark Duplass is kind of trying to egg this on to happen like right now, and in a moment they're like pushing it and shoving each other and everything, and he says I'm not a and and almost says something. Oh, I knew what I was getting at, because it starts out as like one of the first inklings we hear about the backstory as far as him being president and what Sterling's role was and all this is he's talking to the fish and says something about like I'm actually a registered Democrat. I never told him that. So we get the idea that like he's actually Mark Duplass's character was like I guess a Republican
mm-hmm.
president with this person like his right hand man, or maybe he kind of didn't he kind of got relegated to a smaller role than right hand man, but he's kind of over there working for the other side, or his mindset is on the other side. Uh, they don't do a lot with that as far as like I don't think they make them super believable as like two opposite sides of the political coin to
Yeah,
me. Like it's hard to maybe just this many years locked up in a dome together, kind of politics go out the window or whatever. But so he's supposed to be this very open minded guy, and then in this moment where they're fighting with each other, uh, he almost says like the F slur, uh, and so it's like calling into question like how much he really feels about these things. And there's a moment where they're talking later where it's like how I grew up, how this was like the ideas of masculinity and everything were really rigid and ingrained in me, and I can't break out of them. I've tried to like live my life where I try my best to be open minded as much as I can, but there's like something in there I can't fully change or whatever. So there are moments where this movie gets pretty serious for sure, and I like those moments too.
yeah, yeah. I thought they did that very well, and like they kind of came back together through the fish talks, basically.
Yeah, yeah. But the scene that got me the most, man, I gotta say, is it's like so I guess we're gonna do this experiment, and they're like the whole scene of them trying to figure out how we can make this as unsexy as possible. Like I'm just gonna lay here, and then he's like,
Yeah,
well, you'll have to. I just and then when it really gets to be like he's like, oh, we're gonna try it right now. Ray is like, we're gonna. Oh, I didn't know you meant like right now. Like we're gonna try right this second. And his instinct is to pick up some weights, and so he's lifting weights to get his mind off of what he's about to have to do. And so that I was dying laughing during that. And then it turns. I thought they might take it this way, but it turns into like, this very awkward, funny scene. And then there's a moment where, I won't get into the detail of it, I guess, but there's a moment where it's like, ooh, maybe this got a little romantic all of a sudden. And then we wake up. They wake up the next day, and it is very much like pillow talk the next day and everything. So
yeah.
and there's like a whole montage scene afterwards that's like very much like a couple montage of them in the dome together.
Well, we should go ahead and say like how it happens. I guess like the experiment basically is some kind of reminding me like some kind of Mormon thing maybe where
Yeah,
he just covers his entire body with a sheet and has a hole cut out
and cuts a hole
where
in a sheet.
needs to go, and that's where like they kind of they they do that and it happens, and like Sterling K. Brown like reaches up and like accidentally pulls down the sheet over his face, and then they
And
kiss,
then they
and then
kiss,
it's romantic.
which I thought might happen. Yeah. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean that is going to turn some people off of this movie. I get it. You're going to be out of this movie pretty early on. If this movie's going to bother you, at least they have you the courtesy of giving you a way out really early on. Like let's
Yeah,
you can tell if this is gonna bother you or
Because
not.
you know where it's going. You know that's gonna be like the main plot point.
And I gotta say, I did wonder, like, so you said that you didn't get any of this from the trailer, and I cannot tell you that I guessed that this is what was gonna happen by any means. But the moment I see two guys trapped in a dome together, and uh, and they're the last two men on Earth, and then there was a line in the trailer where he makes the Jurassic Park reference of "Life finds a way." I was thinking, "Life finds a way." You know, in Jurassic Park, the like the ultimate like life finds a way thing
Mm-hmm.
is that the dinosaurs find a way to change genders and reproduce when they're not supposed, like they're supposed to all be female, but some of them turn hermaphroditic, and so that like I was thinking a little bit like there's no way they're gonna, but I did kind of think like maybe they're gonna find a way that they can like blend their DNA together and make a person, but they don't have much technology there with them. I just didn't really like go down that rabbit hole too much, but I was thinking like two last two people on Earth and it's two men.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I was
And then
kind
he
of
said the
surprised they
life finds
hadn't.
a way.
Yeah, I like at that point I kind of knew what it was gonna happen because that happened. He transitioned pretty much after that, and I don't know. It. Oh man, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I can just say, this movie does definitely like fast track all of this, or at least the way it's presented to us. Like, um, a lot happens in a small movie with two people, and they pretty much speed run through it, and they kind of like punctuate it with like scenes of what's happening with the fish, because there's
Mm-hmm.
obviously a parallel here with what's happening with the people and the fish. So like every time there's a new, a new day will happen and we see how the fish are doing. There's eggs now, or there's baby fish now, or there's whatever, and it's kind of like marking the progress along the way of this movie. But what was the thing did it come back to you what you were gonna say?
Oh, I guess I just didn't realize in the moment that like the life finds a way had anything to do with that. I thought it was gonna be the story was gonna be more about like two guys in this biosphere together trying to survive, and then something outside happens, and like that's what I expected the movie to be, not what I watched.
And I did think we might get more about like maybe there's other survivors out there, or maybe this isn't the last pod. And they do like hint at that, like maybe there are other people out there, and maybe this is for all we know, maybe this is happening in every one of these pods. But
Mm-hmm. And we
it
don't
does
even
end
know
without us.
that there are more pods because, like you were saying earlier, Sterling K. Brown I think designed it, but he didn't build it. But
I guess it was just like government money built it, but he
yeah, because
made the design. Yeah,
Mark Duplass's character had him build it because he knew
his
that whatever was going to happen to the Earth was going to happen.
his character is so like, at least in the beginning, especially like so like childlike and sort of insecure and prone to freaking out and everything. It's hard to imagine him as the president,
Right.
but you know they'll elect they'll elect anybody, I guess. So
You're
it's
right.
possible. And I wonder how much of that do you think this movie was in any way a commentary on like any former presidents we've had? I don't know.
Foreign,
You could read that into it, I
current,
guess.
or former. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, probably a stretch, but yeah, I like that. What would you rate this?
Probably give it like a 6.5 to a 7, maybe a 7. I did enjoy
Yeah,
it. It was
I'd
weird.
at least give it a 7. Yeah, it's a good movie. It's got some problems. There was like a Mario storyline that they kept like referring back to, and I'm not sure it was as great as they thought it was, because they refer to the Mario Brothers story like 45 times
Yeah,
in the movie. But yeah, for the most part, this is good. It's got little holes and there's things you gotta forgive, but for the most part, it's good. It's a good one. You should see it.
yeah, I'd recommend it.
Well, yeah, guys. Thanks for watching. This was kind of impromptu, but I'm glad we watched it like filled this like right after we watched the movie. It's kind of fresh on the brain. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, if you like this kind of thing, hit like below, and hit us up in the comments. I don't know what kind of movie this even is. A dark comedy? Maybe your favorite dark comedies.
Yeah,
Uh, and yeah, subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks for watching as usual. And we will catch you on the next one.
we'll see ya.